Hello and welcome to Core Finance. I am Matt Brown and I'm joined today by Ricardo Evangelista, who is Senior Executive Officer at ActivTrades. How are you today, Ricardo?
Morning, Matt. Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming on today with obviously ActivTrades. Now, the FX markets have been actually quite active over the summer. There's been a lot of trading opportunity. There's been a lot of news flow coming out. Usually we see a quiet summer and markets really not moving too much. Some currency pairs are now stuck in ranges, but we have seen some breakouts, and we're going to talk through a few of the major currencies this morning, talk about where they are at the moment, how they've got there, and potentially where they could go in the coming months. Sure. So I think starting off with the dollar, just talk us through your views on the dollar over the summer.
Well, these are interesting times for the dollar. We've seen a couple of interest rate rises, which were sort of expected. Now the great expectation lies on the tone, so on the tone of any future announcements and more than the actual contents, because I think the market has a good expectation that up to a certain extent may already be priced into the value of the dollar. Today we have the Jackson Hole central bank summit.
Yes.
So it will be interesting to wait and hear what Janet Yellen is going to have to say. Is she going to give any indication that there'll be a further interest rate increase, or is that in the cards, or will she dampen the spirits by saying that actually wage growth is not that good yet, inflation is not so great. Maybe we need to take a more careful approach. So regarding this, it depends on what side of the spectrum she will approach in the issue. So if she goes in very carefully, that can have an impact by leading to the sale of the dollar. If she is a little bit more hawkish about it and says, no, we're fairly confident, probably not with these words and expression, but if she comes across as being more positive about it all and the current state of the American economy, then we may see an impact on the sentiment of investors and as a consequence, a further rise in the dollar against the other major currencies.
And why do you think that we've seen over the summer, certainly the dollar index, and we'll come on to the euro dollar in a second, selling off fairly aggressively? It's had a bit of a bounce of late, but what do you think the major drivers were behind that sell-off?
I think the major driver behind that sell-off has been the current political environment. So we've had some instability. We know that President Trump is quite trigger happy with his Twitter messages.
Yes, very much.
So he's been hitting the knees of investors, testing their reflexes. And by the looks of it, the markets are still quite healthy in that sense. So there's been quite a lot of reaction, instability, political instability, both internal and also at geopolitical level, with his very gallopant attitude towards North Korea. That hasn't helped. It helped the yen, for example, and the safe haven instruments, but the dollar suffered quite a lot as a consequence. So I would say that the geopolitical environment, with a special emphasis on President Trump's style of communication, probably has been the biggest driver behind it.
Understood. And in contrast, the euro has gone from strength to strength. Would you say that was, initially the Macron effect, stability within Europe, and actually the macro data has been fairly strong from Europe. So do you think that's a key driver?
I would totally agree with that. Yes, I think the figures that we've seen coming out in relation to the Eurozone's economy and its performance have been fairly positive. Even yesterday we saw a composite, the PMI for manufacturing and trade looking very healthy, and we saw that the euro gained some terrain, especially against sterling. So whilst on the dollar side, the main driver behind it has been politics and geopolitics, to be more precise. On the euro side is more the fundamentals of the economy. So the economy is looking solid in the eurozone, good figures, good growth. Unemployment as well is dropping, which was a big drag on the single currencies economies. And also we have perhaps a more positive outlook for the eurozone and for the currency itself as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if fairly soon we see a tapering on the quantitative easing on the purchase programs.
And that will help push potentially the euro higher.
Exactly. And also it's interesting to see that the healthy outlook for the euro and the rise it's had recently does not seem to be having a negative effect and an impact on the exports. So yes, yeah.
I mean, that may take a few months to probably follow through, and certainly the likes of Germany will probably be the hardest hit.
Exactly, the great exporters, yes, exactly.
And that moves us on probably nicely to the pound, which at the moment, I think as of yesterday, was at 8-month lows against the euro. There's a lot going on with the pound. We had a bit of a rally, certainly against the dollar. So cable rallied up to, I think, 132 a few weeks ago, but really since then it's fallen out of favour, not only against the dollar but also against the strengthening euro. What do you think the major factors are for valuing the pound at the moment, and could we see it drop more in value, or do you think that will turn around?
Several analysts are looking into the possibility of parity between pounds and the euro by the end of this year. I think it was JP Morgan who yesterday came out. Someone from JP Morgan who yesterday came out saying that it was realistic to expect that parity. The main reasons for it are, on one hand, the signs that come out from the economy still not that positive. So inflation is stubbornly low, and despite the expectations that we've had for a while, it remains quite low. Wages are quite low as well. There's no real wage growth. Also, the outlook for the economy is not as positive, perhaps, as it was even a few months ago. And on the other hand, we also have some political instability, which cannot be discounted as a major factor here.
Certainly Brexit on the horizon.
Exactly. Brexit, not just, even more than Brexit, perhaps the way it's being handled, the process. I think everybody is prepared now to accept that Brexit is a reality. It's coming, but the way it's being handled has not been the greatest. At least the communication that reaches us does not paint a pretty picture of internal struggles, and it's not great. And also we had, for example, the snap election. The result, as we all know, wasn't what everybody expected at the outset when it was first called for. So I think in the case of the pound, it's a mix between sort of anemic behavior on the economy side, and political instability and uncertainty in relation to what the future will be like. I mean, what will be the outcome of the Brexit negotiations? Will we see a hard Brexit? Will it be sort of a cliff jump, or will it be something more gradual? Well, we'll see, but it's definitely having an impact in the pound, and I think it's the main driver behind its drop against the other major currencies.
Understood. And finally, let's briefly look at the yen, and certainly against the dollar, it's been anchored around this kind of 110 level, and actually it's quite range bound. But you already mentioned the North Korea and the safe haven attraction of the Japanese yen in these cases. Just quickly talk us through. I mean, do you think the yen or the dollar yen pair, where can this go from here? Let's say anchored around the 110 level.
If President Trump maintains the current attitude and quite gallopant pose and keeps threatening other countries, it's quite likely that, as you said, the yen will gain in value because it's seen as a safe haven asset. So investors in times of trouble, so we saw when at the peak of the North Korea issue, when President Trump pretty much threatened to bomb North Korea, there was an upwards movement on the yen. So I think that will be the major driver really at this stage, because we all know that the Japanese economy hasn't been moving significantly despite all the efforts, economics and all that. It hasn't moved significantly in the last few years. I don't see that changing. If anything, it may change for the worse because of some very particular conditions in the country, aging population and all that. So I think the yen and the dollar for the moment are quite likely to stay within the current range, safeguarding that there's no major unsettling situation, war, or maybe President Trump being threatening towards North Korea again. So I think it's quite likely that will remain within the current range.
Understood. Well, lots to take home there. Very, very insightful on all four currencies. So if viewers want to check out more, obviously go to ActivTrades and they can find out more about your company and your ideas. But for the moment, thank you very much for joining us today, Ricardo. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure was all mine, Matt. Thank you very much.